Ferka,
Boycott.
some
Dijeron negro y todos me señalaron. Dijeron igualdad, pero esta vez me separaron. Dijeron mucho, pero no se olvidaron de callarse. Cuánto odio por mi piel sembraron. Dijeron historia y la tergiversaron. Dijeron guerra, muerte, odio y nos culparon. Siempre. Enfermedades y epidemias nos contagiaron. Exterminación de mi fauna complace a tus mercados. Dijeron riqueza y todos se lo robaron. Oro, platino, diamante, a la fuerza se lo llevaron. Y la actualidad es tan triste que todo aquello que dijeron es lo mismo que hoy se dice más. ¿Quién dice, quién explota, quién se beneficia? El asesino, el mismo que da las noticias. Hay una cuenta fácil que siempre me da las grandes riquezas, de dónde vienen y hasta dónde van. Independiente como los Mao Mao, concluyente como los Mao Mao, como los Mao Mao, como los Mao Mao. Somos resistentes como los Mao Mao, independiente como los Mao Mao, concluyente como los Mao Mao, como los Mao Mao, como los Mao Mao. Somos resistentes como los Mao Mao. Nati Dre es afroresistencia, cultura ancestral, afrodescendencia, solidaridad. Esa es la esencia, la diáspora africana eleva la conciencia, conciencia negra, universal, progresista y transcultural. Negros y mestizos revolucionando, pueblos caribeños y africanos en un solo bando. No más explotación, colonialismo interno, no más confusión, supremacía blanca en el Babilón. Soy rojo, negro y verde, afroliberación. Mientras más negro, más represión. Somos creadores, recupera tu visión. Mi misión es educar con amor, contra el silencio, vivo sin temor. Independiente como los Mao Mao, concluyente como los Mao Mao, como los Mao Mao, como los Mao Mao. Somos resistentes como los Mao Mao, independiente como los Mao Mao, concluyente como los Mao Mao, como los Mao Mao, como los Mao Mao. Somos resistentes como los Mao Mao.
Rise up.
Rise up,
again.
y'all. Good morning. Good morning.
Oh, how y'all feeling? Because we were, welcome to the
Hey, I'm
uprising.
feeling
everybody.
good.
Okay.
Good.
Good. We fired up and ready to go.
I
What's
know,
up,
Fired
bro.
up.
We all got our second win because we was off to a little bit of a rocky start this morning
Yeah, for sure.
behind the scenes, but we got it together.
Got it together. We got it
Absolutely,
together.
man. I'm excited,
We got it.
and it's Friday. And
Yes,
it's
it
Friday.
is.
It's not just Friday; it's Free 'em All Friday.
Free
That's
'em
it.
all Friday. Let's
It's
go.
Free 'em All
It
Friday.
free them all
The fight
Friday.
continues,
Absolutely.
Primo, speaking of political prisoners, you gonna be at the college next month, right?
Yeah, next month. Yeah, talking to the community and teaching the community about political prisoners and
Nice.
why we need to support them. I think it's super important, especially thinking about one of the conversations we were having before that we wanted to have with the uprisers is about be organizing in person and having that personal connection when you're organizing, and the importance of us being in community in person and moving away from doing things online. And so I'm just glad that we're seeing that happen a lot more. So yeah.
No,
Definitely.
absolutely.
It makes a difference, man. There are just things that you cannot do online. And also, even if you can see somebody's face online, sometimes just the spirit of their comments, you can't really feel the spirit, you can't feel the vibrations all the time. And you do need personal touch, personal connection with people. You need to be able to put your arm on someone's shoulder or hold somebody's hand or give them a hug or whatever it is. You need that physical connection. That is one of the things that we literally cannot live without, is personal touch and physical connection. So I think that it's important for us to continue in as much as we can to make every effort to be in person. When you can be in person, show up in person. Online is convenient at times, especially if it's a webinar or something that you can do while you're driving or doing other things at home. But there are other things that require in-person action. in-person connection. And I think it's so important to show up for people as much as we can in person, so that they know that they're not taken for granted, that they're not being tokenized, that they're not being used, that they're not just a body.
And to know who they are. Because also too, we know that it's already hard enough organizing within our communities, and having that trust there, and knowing who is coming and working next to you and beside you. And so it's important to also have that personal connection, so you can get to know, oh, who is this person? This person knows this person, and this person knows that person. This person is organizing in this way. We already know that online is already full of trolls, and already full of anonymous people and bots, and agents of all kinds. So that it's also important for us, when we're thinking about that too, in terms of the way that we're moving, that is also important, and that brings a certain aspect that is helpful and makes it a little bit easier.
Yeah, that personal connection too. Yeah, that personal connection is, particularly if it's frequent, it's going to supersede this online sort of relationship or connection that that person has, because people want to be able to see you, be able to touch you, a hug, a handshake. Those things go a long way. A handshake go a long way, right?
They do.
A hug goes a long way. So making those in-person connections is going to be important, and it is going to be necessary for Black people to be on the ground to be able to undermine this machine, because at the end of the day, we don't have control over this right here. These platforms, the media, there's independent media and so forth, but as far as like the status quo, those CNMs, like they have those powerhouses that we are up against, the fourth branch of the government.
Right.
That's what we are up against, and they have the resources. So we have to be on the ground, do it guerrilla style when we're talking about this organizing and fighting for Black liberation. So that's what it's all about, making those connections, and the people, they're being inundated with all of this information too online. So if you're not in their face, they got a million, I mean, I say, but there's 1,000, hundreds of people who are in their ear about what they should be doing, how they should look. All of these distractions online, that's what we have to overcome. So the on the ground is always going to beat that. We got to get back to it.
Absolutely.
And this was also we were having a discussion as well before we got on about the boycotts and what that means in terms of us doing it in this time, and how we organize it, and how it's being rolled out. And I was saying that, like, I'm in a group chat or two where people are, throwing this. And I think I even seen a video that came out. I think it was Roland Martin that was like on the video, that was talking about the national boycott of Target and other stores that have rolled back DEI. And actually somebody asked me about that yesterday. Like, what do you think about this? And I was saying that, like, I think it's a good idea. We should have always been working to have something that we don't have to worry about someone taking away, or someone doing what they will with, and being dependent on other institutions that are not with our own institutions in that kind of way. And we were talking also about, like, Akimba brought up a good point about the blueprint for Black power, and having important readings and ideas and understandings around, because of the fact that we should be looking at ourselves as nation building. And I even think, like, even the term nation building, you don't hear that as much anymore. And I think that makes a big difference in terms of how we see ourselves, but also how we end up in these kind of situations. Because let's say people never got away from it being popular to nation build, or even if it wasn't popular to that extent, but at least it was more in the minds of the people than it is now. That if we would have continued along that stream in a very meaningful major way, that we would have had something. We wouldn't have to be so reactionary in terms of looking to see what they're going to do and what they're doing, and then having to respond from that point on, because we know that it's these corporations, America in general, are not for us. And so it's never a surprise to us when we see these types of things being rolled out, as in the way that we see them being rolled out now by these corporations.
Yeah. I mean, why is it more important to read Shakespeare than to read Dr. Emerson Wilson or Du Bois or Carter G. Woodson? Why are we not being inundated with that information? Why are we reading A Brave New World or Indian in a Cupboard? I'm talking about things that he had me read.
Yeah, absolutely. His
This is what they had me read.
Look, Kimba, that iambic pentameter is extremely important. Okay.
Oh man. But yeah, like why aren't we taking precedent on these readings, such as Carter's Miseducation of the Negro, Blueprint for Black Power, Black on Black Violence, Dr. Emerson Wilson's? If we dealing with that in our community, intercommunal violence or horizontal violence is in our community, and we have brothers and sisters in our community that we've lost to gun violence, extended family, and so forth. This is something that we're dealing with. How come this isn't a book that we're reading, studying to understand this problem in our community? These are the questions we need to be, asking ourselves and asking our leaders, so-called leaders, why we aren't doing this. Because that's one of the issues I think we have is the colonizer has done a great job. Who's this Kalanji dude? Hold on. Oh, all right. I was about to block him. I'm like, gangster. What?
Like, who is that?
Who you calling a gangster? Oh, that's the comrade, man. But no, but one of the issues, I'll say this last point, and let y'all build. The colonizer has done a great job in getting everyone, the working class, to believe that they can be a part of the ranks of the colonizer. And so this idea that you can reach that climb that social ladder and be a part of the colonizer has kept us in general, Black people in general, from organizing and tearing down the system that is oppressing and exploiting the masses of African people. The white working class has fell for the trap as well, and has become the enemy of the African as a result of that. As if you read their history, then you learn that yes, most white people in the South did not own slaves, but most white people in the South brought into the system of slavery because they had dreams of one day being a slave master. They had dreams of one day having their own plantation, right? So that kept them in alignment with the very people who are oppressing and exploiting them. And so today, that same white working class, as you can see how they voted for Trump, but you have the neocolonialist Black folks who are buying into the system as well. And that's an issue. I'm sorry if I digress, but but that was we have to get on it though.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I agree. We definitely do. And I think it's pertinent and more than pertinent to our struggle for us to get on each other and to make sure that we know who's who and we working with who's who, and the work is being done by the people who really are doing the work. Not people who are just chatting.
No, absolutely. One thing that I remind people all the time is that it is even biblical principle. The Bible even says, know them that labor among you. You got to know who you with, and you also have to know who's with you. And one thing that you will see in this struggle for Black liberation, you'll see who's really there for the struggle and who is there for themselves. It's a lot of chumps that step up in this movement. It's a lot of people who come here for recognition. It's a lot of people who get a real quick rise to fame because they spoke out about one thing and they actually had some real catchy commentary, and people just recorded them on YouTube. They put them on Facebook. They put them on Instagram. They put them on TikTok, and them videos went viral. And the next thing you know, it's cameras everywhere trying to follow them, but there's no substance there. Like, they ain't doing nothing. Literally, they sitting there, you know, looking cute, and they smiling for the camera. And when they open their mouths, they don't even have their own talking points. They are literally parroting what someone else has said, and they're taking someone else's story trying to make it their own. And y'all know that get real personal for me, because
man,
I had an experience. But
you like, hold on, that sound like
yes.
But I'm saying here though
that did that. We rebuked the devils that did that.
That's it. Look, we rebuke them in the name of Jesus, and we cast them back to the pits of hell from whence they came. Child, we got to put some real stank on it when it comes to them. But
absolutely,
there are people who will take the misfortune of others to gain fame and notoriety for themselves. They do not stick with the program of justice or for liberation. They're not walking with these families. You know, for instance, all the people who I see who will jump on the bandwagon for a family whose child was murdered by the police or whose loved one was murdered by the police. They are there when the cameras are there. But when the cameras aren't around, neither are they. When there is no big event that's going to be publicized, then those people somehow can't make it. They can't come with you to talk to the people at City Hall if you're talking to council members. They can't come with you, you know, and sit with you just to support you if you need that. But when the cameras are there, they are there. And unfortunately, we got too much of that. I'm always harping on those people who call themselves members of the clergy, because that is where I fall into a lot of things. And I don't associate with them suckers. They don't like me and I don't like them. And that is fine. Never the twain shall meet, because I stay sucker free in as much as I can.
I hear that. That's what I'm talking about.
I don't want to be grouped along with a group of people who can only show up for press conferences and to be seen in photos with the mayor. I can't be a part of a group that knows that they have people in their congregation who have suffered police violence, yet they still support the police. They refuse to boycott Chick-fil-A or Coca-Cola because they were the biggest donors to the Atlanta Police Foundation that built Cop City. I can't get behind a group that calls itself the Concerned Black Clergy, but instead of helping the community when a man was murdered because the city of Atlanta did a sweep for the Martin Luther King parade, they decided that it was more important to go and march in the parade than to be out there helping the community. They all got churches that are sizable, but there's no houseless people sleeping in your churches or eating in your churches. But you're going to make that Martin Luther King march, though. You're going to make that Martin Luther King march.
Take them pictures.
You're going to take them pictures with Martin King.
You're going to put on a show.
You're going to get up there at Ebenezer. Even had the nerve to speak at the funeral. Like, I'm sorry. If I was this family, I would have been outraged. There would be nothing that they could do for me. And maybe that's a story we could cover at a later date. But I am just sick and tired of people who are supposed to be shepherds of others who are actually the ravening wolves. They are the ones who have come to steal, kill, and destroy, because they do nothing for our communities but lead people to hell in a handbasket. And damn it, I'm tired.
And I think also too, this I think this leads us in greatly into a Black Power break when we're thinking about friends, those who are friends and those who are not, those who pretend to be your friends and those who are actually not your friends, even though they're pretending. So with that said, the Black Power break and see you on the other side. You're watching the Rise Up Morning Show.
But being friendly and being a friend, I think, are two different things. I think there are many whites who act friendly toward Negroes. A fox acts friendly toward the lamb. And usually the fox is the one who ends up with the lamb chop on his plate. The wolf doesn't act friendly, and therefore the wolf has more difficulty in getting the lamb chop in his plate.
I'd like to point out, though, that...
And I say that because it is usually if you study the structure of the Negro community, economically, politically, civically, psychologically, and otherwise, it's controlled by the white liberal, who usually poses as the friend of the Negro, who actually differs from the white conservative in the same way that the fox differs from the wolf. Their appetite is the same. Their motives are the same. It's only their mannerisms and methods that differ.
I would agree that no doubt there have been a large number of whites who have posed as liberals and as friends of the Negro and who have time and again betrayed the Negro. On the other hand, I think one could point to a large number of whites who have struggled for civil rights, for equality, and have got little or nothing out of it, other than quite a few bruises.
Give me an example.
Well, the large number of white students who have gone into the South, for example, working for SNCC and other organizations.
Not working for SNCC or other organizations, but working for the white political machines who benefit by the voting efforts of Negroes.
Okay. I'll be more specific. I would cite Herbert Hill, for example, as a kind of person who has championed Negro job rights, for example, in New York City and elsewhere. He has fought the political machine.
First time I met Herbert Hill personally was when they were picketing to stop the working on the Harlem Hospital in Harlem. Negroes for 10 years had to fight the city to get an annex built on the Harlem Hospital. Because in Harlem, we need a hospital more so than anything else. Our people are sick. Plus, we do a lot of cutting and shooting of each other, though we profess to be nonviolent. And Herbert Hill brought his forces out and stopped the working on that site. This is the first time I ever saw him. Then, when work was brought to a halt on a hospital in Harlem, the same Negroes tried to stop the work at the Downstate Medical Center in Brooklyn, which is predominantly white. They were out there for 3 months during the summer. Couldn't stop anything. And I never saw Herbert Hill out there one time. Now, whenever it takes a stoppage of something that's going to affect the white man, you find the white liberal absent. But when it involves something that primarily will affect the best interests of black people, and black people only, then that white liberal is present. Herbert Hill is the labor secretary for the NAACP. And if he was interested in black people, he would prepare a black man with the type of knowledge and understanding of the labor troubles involving black people that would enable a black man to sit in the same position as Secretary of Labor or Labor Secretary in the NAACP. I'm suspicious of whites who join Negroes and always have to be in the lead, who always have to be the head, who always have to be at the top in Negro organizations. Those whites who really have the interest of blacks at heart, let them give some advice to some Negroes and stand on the sideline. But don't join the organization and then get at the head of it and pose as a friend of Negroes.
Well, I would defend his sincerity and his commitment. And more than that, I would say that just because a person is a Negro or a black American does not mean he's going to struggle for Negro rights or for jobs for Negroes or anything else. I think that today you could point to a large number of Negro leaders who have consistently betrayed Negroes in a whole host of areas.
They aren't really Negro leaders. These are puppets that have been put in front of the Negro community by white liberals. These are parrots that have been put in front of the Negro community by white liberals. You can't name me a Negro leader who has been betrayed Negroes, who has not been endorsed, sanctioned, subsidized, and supported by the white liberals.
Minister Malcolm, I'd like to...
Well, I could cite one example would be Congressman Dawson, for example, in Chicago. In Chicago, a large number of liberals located in the Hyde Park district have consistently fought Dawson and his betrayals of the Negro, and they've also fought some of the people who represent Dawson on the Chicago City Council.
The only Negro I know who is constantly fought, only Negro politician that I know who is constantly fought by white liberals is Adam Clayton Powell. And they call him a racist because he speaks so bluntly on the race issue. But I'm not, as I said, not too familiar with Dawson and his work.
Welcome back. You're tuned into the Rise Up Morning Show. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe and you hit the notification button and you like. Am I missing anything else?
Like, share, and subscribe. Share this broadcast with somebody, because somebody might need to hear some of the things that we're talking about. I think people definitely need to hear Brother Malcolm talking about friends versus being friendly, and how white faces have constantly been in the places where Black people are still oppressed. So many times we would hear people talk about the NAACP, and I have personally had debates with people about the NAACP, the efficacy of the NAACP, even the purpose of the NAACP. But Malcolm definitely touched on that point about Herbert Hill being National Field Secretary of the NAACP at the time. But were you trying to train a Black person to do that job? Were you really trying to make the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People for the advancement of colored people? Did you want any colored people to help advance that mission? I don't know, even to this day. These days, they've gotten a bit wiser and they put the Black faces in high places, but still, they are doing exactly what was mentioned before. They are parroting. They are parroting what has been said by some people. That was right on point. Right on point.
Yeah, and I think too, we know we live in a time and also in a society that benefits those who want to pretend. Like that's what, and if it can find someone who's good enough at parroting, pretending, they will be paid handsomely for that parroting and for them to be in that position. So even when he mentions how, we have those Negro leaders, they're puppets. They're the ones who are propped up by white liberals. And especially, I think before we went into the break, we were talking about people who show up because the camera's going to be there and there's going to be a conference, and that people are chosen and because they make particular statements, and now they've become a face of this or that. And we know we don't control the media. So when the media is picking up something and running with it, and they have chosen this person to be the face of this is a choice that the white liberal media is making, because we know that we're no longer in the developmental stages of media where they're allowing certain things to be on because they don't know what the reach is going to be, and this is something new. No, this is tried, this has been tested. So that's why we know now there's certain people that they don't put on and give wide broadcasting and viewership to, and then that there's people that they do put on and do that for. And it's specifically because they know either those people, they really are just pretending and talking in your face, but really once the camera goes off and once they're not being shown to the masses of people, they're doing and saying and acting contrarily to whatever they were just saying on the media.
Exactly. And they know there are also some people who are just that desperate for a spotlight. There are some people. There is a person I know. I mean, of course, there's lots of people around Atlanta who are desperate for a spotlight because, everybody in Atlanta
now, right? Everybody's running.
Everybody in Atlanta is
everybody's going to Tyler Perry Studios.
Everybody's an artist. Everybody is some type of actor, actress, singer, performer, whatever. But also in the movement community in Atlanta, there are so many posers. And there is one particular person that calls herself a national civil rights activist, because this heifer will be broke as a joke and jump on a bus to go somewhere just to be in front of a camera, not even know what the fight is about, but will just be there because she likes to hear herself on a bullhorn. I actually saw her in a documentary that was done by one of the environmental organizations that I'm aware of. And I can tell you, because I know the person personally, she don't give a damn about the environment. She's not concerned about how.
I don't know why I'm out here.
I don't even know if she can. I don't even know if she can spell environment. But the thing is, it was what was popular. There were going to be cameras there. and she thought it was prudent to show up. I've seen this person at people's funerals. I mean, every time somebody that's murdered by the police gets national acclaim and they're having their funeral at New Birth or Ebenezer or whatever, that child is there boo-hoo crying on the casket, child. Ain't really trying to do nothing in these streets for the family, but it's gonna be there in front of that camera. And unfortunately, like a person like that, that's who the establishment wants to prop up, because they want you basically a Ben Crump, right? They want a Ben Crump because they don't want families to get justice. They want families to take a settlement and shut up, because that's all Ben Crump gonna do for you. Gonna get you some news coverage, go get you a funeral at some big old church and get it on the news, but gonna get you a settlement. You can't get your baby back, and the person who murdered them is probably still gonna be walking free.
Exactly. And you know, they got us stuck in time. You know, they got us stuck in a time where we were trying to show the world, you know, at least in some parts of the movement where it was trying to show the world and the American public what was happening to us, and so that they can have that kind of visceral reaction. But we're not in that time anymore. They've been seeing it.
They know it.
So like, we don't, you know, those that kind of thing is not really the aim that we should be aiming for. Like, that strategy isn't necessarily the strategy anymore. And I think it's about us making sure that we're having the constant forward motion that we need, because they've got us stuck in kind of like a time warp of the civil rights movement, where that's where we're you know, people are stuck in general, but moving consistently, because they're always moving consistently against us. And so when we think about the need for us to stay on a forward motion with this protracted struggle is really important. And I think, you know, what's one of the things that's really important about that is constantly getting the information in the news. And that's what we do here on the Rise Up Morning Show. Yes. We give you commentary, but we also bring you the stories. And so we're going to move into some stories that we're going to be talking about today. We'll start off with the first story, and then we'll jump into the rest of them after. You know, we'll have discussion and build upon the different ones. But one of the ones we wanted to talk about today in particular was Turkey taking over former French military bases in Chad. And I think this story is important because I think we're paying attention to what's happening in the Sahel region, and we're paying attention to the pushing out and the barring of the French within these countries. But we also have to be paying attention to, okay, what is happening as this transition is happening? Where are we moving toward? Because when we think about that motion, the motion's got to be forward, not backward, right? And so I thought this story was important to think about, especially thinking about Chad and the move to push the French out, but also then why, you know, it's interesting to me, and I think it's something to think about and talk about, this replacement of the French by the Turkish. So it says really quickly to go through the story, Turkey reportedly supplied Chad with Bayraktar drones and stationed military advisors and Turkish company personnel at the Faya Lago base. So it goes on to talk about how following France's withdrawal from eastern Chad, Turkey is preparing to assume control of a military base in Abiche. The base was previously, we know, ran and stationed by France, but because they've been being pushed out, they're no longer there. And so, according to Turkish sources, they say that Turkey has already stationed drones there, as we mentioned at the beginning of the story as well, and that we can jump down here to where it talks about the French departure and the way that it paved the way for Turkey, and that Turkey's increased military engagement comes days after France withdrew its last troops from Chad. The pullout marked the end of decades of French military presence in the country. And it says for years, which I thought was interesting, for years, Turkish media have criticized France's role in the region, blaming Paris for instability and economic struggles. analysis suggests that Ankara has been positioning itself to take over Chad's military partnerships, anticipating France's exit. So I thought that was, something very interesting in this story. And it goes on to say that a pro-Turkish government news source outlet welcomed the military deal, promoting the view that the agreement with N'Djamena would bring, quote unquote, will bring peace and stability to the region, particularly in eastern Chad, which borders Sudan, a country currently, as we know, that's experiencing one of the worst humanitarian crises in our day. I think some say the worst humanitarian crisis in our day right now. And so just to end off the story, it talks about how there's bilateral ties between Turkey and Chad, and those things have been strengthened in the past couple of years. And that the president also talks about, and the Turkish president talks about and expresses this quote unquote readiness to deepen military and defense cooperation with Chad. And just saying that it's important for them to have this kind of joint security effort in the Sahel region. And then the Chadian president, Muhammad Idris Deby Itno, also expressed a good sentiments over the growing partnership, stating that Ankara and N'Djamena support each other in international organizations. So and share a common vision for strengthening bilateral ties. So what do y'all think about this story and this move of the Turkish in as the French go out?
I mean, one of the things that come to mind, I think we spoke about it before, trading one, I guess I don't want to look at Turkey as the same as France, but at the same time, like this non-African nation coming in, you trading in the security, or shifting the security from your former colonizer to a non-African nation. And, just speaks to the contradiction when you have to be dependent on someone outside of your boundaries, or, outside of the African, I'm going to say continent. African nation is what we're striving for, but outside the continent for your security. But this speaks to this religious affiliation as well, which we have to be mindful of, especially with several African nations that are have Arabic as their official language. I think Arabic is one of the official languages of Chad, French and Arabic, and has a predominantly Islamic population. There's a large Christian population there, but I think most people from Chad are Muslim. So there's those affiliations that they have, and so these things can undermine African unity. We see with just looking at Sudan, where the Republic of Sudan is bringing in people from the Middle East. What's that place everybody like to go to?
Dubai.
Dubai, yes.
Dubai, or the Emirates, right? Yeah. How they have a role in that conflict that's taking place on African soil, and so these are things to keep in mind. So we see Turkey there because Chad has there is internal strife within Chad's borders, and so it's that internal contradiction. What's Turkey role going to be in that? And then we still have Russia, who's playing the part. It's all of these outside players who are really playing the part within these African borders. So as I guess, like, the thing that I would like to see is just African nations turning inwardly and to look towards other African nations and ties with them, and seeing how they can strengthen them within within the continent. Because the trend across Africa is we still are looking towards Europe. We're still looking towards China. Eastern and Western Europe, I would say, and China and the United States as sort of this, I don't want to say a savior, I guess, you know.
Yeah.
I think it's more like as the North Star in a sense.
Yes.
That we're
Yes.
still following their example, that they are still the ones who show the way.
Yeah, yeah.
But it leads to so much destabilization. Like
yeah,
underpinning it all
exactly.
is just the destabilization of African countries. And the fact that Chad would trade France for Turkey, again, Ikemba just highlighted, you know, the religious connection. We can see that. But at the same time, do you really think that Turkey is there to give Chad its own self-determination? Do you think Turkey is there to say, oh, Chad, we're just going to defend you and you do what you do? Absolutely not.
Absolutely.
Those things don't happen without the expectation of control. And again, instead of turning inward, which is a difficult thing to do, because as was just yes, I mean, as was just stated, you have the United Arab Emirates who have skin in the game in Sudan. You know, we have Israel that has skin in the game everywhere because of the United States, of course. And then we have other countries like France, like Belgium, like Germany that still have interest in places in Africa. And it's still mind-boggling how these white people just got to say, yeah, let's go over here to the blackest place on earth and let's carve it up and dole it out. And you take this one, I'll take that one, you get that one, you get that one. And we're just going to exercise all this control for all this time. I'm still waiting for the day that the people of Africa will stand up. And of course, it goes back to that Black misleadership class, because those people in leadership, you look at Rwanda, look at Paul Kagame. He's not there for the Rwandan people. Doesn't matter that he looks like them. Doesn't matter that he is Rwandan. He ain't there for the Rwandan people. He's there to sell them out for whatever benefits him. And I struggle at times to understand what does benefit you when your country is constantly at war. What does benefit you when your country has nothing of its own? What is that real benefit? There's no real benefit there. But we constantly see our brothers and sisters in Africa allowing themselves to be placed on almost like a just a carousel. And it's like you're just going around and around and you're being picked off by these different European nations and now even other nations within the Middle East and North Africa. You're just, it's like you are there to be chosen and somebody else gets to decide what they will do with you. And that there can never be a united Africa that way until somebody comes together. People are going to have to come together and say, no more. This is our Africa. It is not for the European. It is not even for the Turkish. It is not for the Kurds. It's not for anyone else. It is our Africa. And we need to decide how it is that we live, how we deal with people, and how we allow people to show up in our space. Like, it's just some things that you should not be able to do.
Africa for the Africans, you know, because even if you're saying how people show up in our space, one of the things this makes me think about is, okay, it said that the Turkish have been watching, you know, and paying attention to what was happening in Chad and with the French, right? So that they've been positioning themselves already and they've been eyeing and, you know, analyzing and strategizing for when the French leave. Have African people been looking at Turkey? You know,
right?
Have we been analyzing and strategizing along that lines? Absolutely not. And do we have military bases in their spaces? Absolutely not. And so one of the things, you know, that I would like to see is just the getting rid of military bases, like just the complete shuttering of military bases, because we don't have military bases, African military bases in these countries that have military bases all over Africa. And if they don't have to have them, we don't have to have them. We already know we don't have to have them, but at least if you could look at it's like if you had a trade imbalance if you had a trade imbalance with a country, you would look and see like, okay, well, this is not necessarily working out for us because we're not benefiting from this trade agreement. Like it's actually, you know, detrimental to us because of it's an imbalance on the end that we're not really making or benefiting from this particular economic policy. So it's the same thing. There's an imbalance in terms of this, you know, militarization and who's allowed into your country and who has what kind of power. And so I think, to your point, like being careful about who's in our spaces, but also additionally, are we being vigilant in those same kind of ways that these other countries, it's like double dutch, like, you know, waiting for their turn.
That's right. Literally,
like, you know,
waiting for their turn.
Jump in. And they're paying attention, but we're not paying attention to them lining up, you know, getting ready, you know, positioning themselves. If I see you positioning yourself to jump in, who are you? Where you come from? Why you want to position yourself here?
Exactly.
Or even space that, you know, we should be having for you.
One of the reasons why AFRICOM has to go. There should not be any type of United States Africa command. Like, how do you have an Africa command and you are the United States? That's right. Get your military bases out of Africa. Get your military bases out of any other country in the world that is not yours, because no other country has a military base here. Just like you said, Natasha, I think that people tend to forget all of these military bases and where they are and how they're strategically placed, and how in many of the places where we have these bases, the people in those countries are not being taken care of. The people in those countries are not benefiting from an American military base being there. It is literally only to benefit America, but it is imperialist and capitalist, just as we are, not looking to benefit anyone else. It is only about how we can profit from those things.
Yep. Kimber, you want to jump into your story?
Yeah, we can.
Kimber was sitting over there like he waiting for his turn to.
Jump on in.
No, not like that. You know, but I think another thing on this topic though is just understanding the position that African nations are in, African people in general around the world, that makes us vulnerable to this sort of takeover when we see gentrification taking place or ethnic cleansing taking place across the planet in our communities in America and throughout the African nation. That is a result of the historical relationship that we have with these colonizers. And when we look at the decisions that are being made by the leadership that allows this to happen, that allows ethnic cleansing, which they call gentrification, to take place, because they have to sit down. If you have a nation that is ran by African people, or you have a community where you have the city council, the mayor, the state reps, everybody's Black, but ethnic cleansing is still taking place. So they have to be in cahoots with these colonizers. And so going back to the vulnerability that we have in resources, just how the selling out that takes place, right? They're getting something for selling out the Black community, the Black nation. And so the military bases, it costs to have those military bases in these countries. And so when you see Turkey coming in, that's because we have this space here and we need some money. we don't need some space being occupied and it's not bringing in no resources. So who's willing to come in? So there's those sort of things happening, right? When you can have Trump talking about setting up not military bases, but prisons. But setting up prisons around. So there could be a day in the future where we're like, United States of America has the most prisons around the world. That could be
very possible.
Realistic thing.
Very possible.
These are the countries in which American prisons are based at. Like, those sort of things. And these countries will be willing to do it because of resources. So it's something fundamentally wrong about the system that we're a part of, that, and I'm talking about the political economy that needs to be dismantled, and needs to be destroyed. So there has to be this pushback against that. And I don't think these people who are in leadership are looking to bring about a revolution. They're looking to see how they can get resources and survive in the system that is oppressing and exploiting them.
Yeah, and I before we just jump right into your story, just a real quick comment about, you know, the metaphysical empire, as Ngugi wa Thiong'o calls it, right? This, they might not be physically there in the same way in which, you know, when we think about colonialism, imperialism, they used to be there, but metaphysically they still have their empire. Like this is like another kind of way to maintain empire when you have all of these military bases all around the world, but also like Kimba's point to, now you want to try to have prisons all around you to prison in different places. And speaking of Trump, we're jumping into Kimba's story that talks a little bit about Trump and some of the things that's happening. We know, like, especially right now, he's always in the news. Always in the news.
Yes, he is. And we were talking about South Africa the other day in regards to the land. Brother Rakeem was on here bringing up that story. So we're going back to Occupy Tanzania, and this connects to the story that I feel like it all connects. But well, I was going to say I was the story that I brought up last time I was here connects to this story in a sense. I'll make the connection, but the conflicting signals from Trump could disrupt HIV meds, and what's the impact, right? And we was talking about neglected tropical diseases last time when I was here, and just this dependency that we have in this system. So Africa, all of its resources for HIV meds do not come from America, but this can have tremendous impact on those who are able to get access to their meds. And they're already closing hospitals, it's been reported. So I'll just read some of it, then we could talk about it. After abruptly pausing PEPFAR on Tuesday, the U.S.-led HIV/AIDS program created in 2003 and credited with even 25 million lives globally, the Trump administration issued an ambiguous waiver for programs that provided life-saving humanitarian assistance earlier this week. It wasn't immediately clear whether PEPFAR qualifies for the waiver in full or in part. Either way, the off-again, on-again message has created waves of confusion, including in South Africa, which has the largest PEPFAR portfolio in the world. At a press conference on Wednesday, Health Minister Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi said, so far, we haven't received any letter from the American government. Tried to contact the embassy on the U.S., we couldn't get them. Some HIV clinics in the country have already shut down until they receive further clarity, such as Engage Men's Health that provides HIV treatment, including crucial life-saving drugs that prevent HIV from replicating. Their website now states that they regret to announce that due to an immediate stop work order issued by our funder, we cannot provide any services until further notice. Other groups have sounded the alarm as well. We are seeing interruptions in medication supply. Clinics are scaling back services, and community health workers have literally been losing their livelihoods, says Link Shepard with the Triangle Project, the oldest LGBTQ plus organization in Africa. We risk undoing decades of progress, especially in communities that are structurally marginalized. So I'll read this last. And the confusion isn't limited to South Africa and Uganda. Dr. Adolf, why would you name?
For them them it's a regular name. For them it's a regular name.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Clinical researcher at the Joint Clinical Research Center says, I, for one, have received many calls from my patients asking what their fate is. So I'll stop reading there. This story is several days old, but some of the latest stories in the last few hours, I didn't like the sources, so I didn't share that one. But the most recent stories are again saying that there are clinics shutting down, people are having difficult time getting access to their meds, and so like HIV and AIDS, HIV can lead to AIDS, and so if someone has HIV and they're not getting their medication, then their viral load can increase, and they could potentially have full-blown AIDS as a result of not having access to their medication, and so this is I think the vulnerable position that we find ourselves in as African people when we have to depend on the very people who, because of the system that they have designed, a genocidal system, they wage genocide on us, and so a lot of these health implications, issues that we do have, is a result of colonialism. And I'm not just talking about HIV. I'm talking about all these. So the last time, again, going back to the neglected tropical diseases that could be, these are preventable diseases that are affecting billions of people, and there's several of them. But to have a story where they're talking about they finally have in Niger finally have solved the problem of river blindness,
right?
Which is just one of many neglected tropical diseases. When all of these things could be addressed, it just shows the priority that the colonizers place on African people, how they are valued within this system, and whether
if the colonizers had their way, there would be no African people.
Well, and this is part of
people, and this is a part of the plan, right? and think about this connected to right here in the United States, where Black women have consistently been the fastest growing population of people to contract HIV. Think about the value of a Black woman. Think about the value of the Black community, period. But then also think about places like your local harm reduction center that routinely does free HIV testing and gives out things like PrEP, gives out, and not just HIV testing, but any type of STD testing. They're doing this for free, and they're giving out PrEP for free. And anybody can go there and get treatment for free. These policies will affect these types of clinics also. Think about, as much as I don't necessarily advocate for them, but Planned Parenthood is a place where anyone, male or female, can walk in and get HIV testing, and they do help with treatment. But think about how this will affect the community, not only in Africa, but other parts of the world where the United States is supposedly lending aid in terms of healthcare. But then think about the fact that in this country, in the United States of America, the so-called United States of America, healthcare is one of the biggest fights that we have consistently in this country. Access to healthcare, adequate medical care. And in the video that we saw with Malcolm X talking about a picket to close a hospital in the city of Atlanta. And I have to say this because I live in this super Black city, right? We always tout that we got a mayor named Dre, but this dude let the largest medical center after Grady closed down in the heart of a historically Black neighborhood. How do you do that? And we think about the actions of the governor in the state of Georgia, the state at large. There have been at least 14 hospital closings since this guy became governor. And they are all in predominantly Black areas, in rural areas. because they want to cut off access to medical care. They want to make sure that you will fall ill and you can do nothing about it. Aside from the fact that they've already made most people dependent on the drugs that contribute to capitalism, because we know that big pharma is a huge part of how this country runs.
Yeah.
Huge part of why most congressional candidates and those who are sitting in Congress are in the seats that they're in, right? They've made you dependent on their drug. And now they regulate it to a point where it's so scarce that you can't even get your hands on it. Instead of making sure, though, that we have healthy food to eat so that we don't develop some issues in the first place, instead of making sure that we have access to the knowledge, like you say, Ikemba, what books are impressed upon us and the ones that are withheld, knowing that you can eat your way to, cures for cancer. Knowing that, some sour sop, some black seed oil, and some other things will keep you cancer free, will even eradicate cancer in your body. Instead, they want us to think that radiation is the best thing for us. Instead, they want us to think that chemotherapy is the way to cure it. Knowing that by having access to the right foods without all of the pesticides, without all of the things that go into the soil here in the United States. The FDA is a joke, because literally, I don't even know what the standards are.
Food and drug working together?
A joke, because the food now is the drug. Like, the foods we eat, what we're purchasing in the grocery store, these are not the best things. But of course, the government had to make sure that Monsanto can have control of so many seeds that we can't even get our hands on to be able to plant things and grow certain foods. That, of course, is a whole other story, because that's a lot to be said about that. But just thinking about how insidious it is to withhold very necessary medication that would help cure something like HIV, or at least help people to deal and live with HIV. We know how far we've come, that HIV is no longer a death sentence. There are a few people who are having to even go into full-blown AIDS because of the prevalence of medications to help control HIV. But when you decide that you are going to go into a country in Africa and withhold those life-saving medications, it's pure evil. And I understand, from what I understand, the plan is to do the same thing even here, because Trump doesn't believe that it's important for Black people to have access to health care. Doesn't believe that it's important for people living with HIV to be able to control their viral load counts and have meaningful lives. Anything that is seen to cripple the Black community, this is the way that you can be sure that Trump is leaning these days.
Absolutely. And I would also just to add on to this is, when we think about how people have to deal with not just the medical system, but like with these systems in general, and without the support, and also like we were saying, like just the targeted approach of making sure we don't have access to the things that we need, how we can, when we think about solving our own problems, and like we were talking about before, knowing and thinking of as a nation and building toward that way, we think about solutions for climate change, because that's like the buzzword nowadays, right? So people are trying to think about, okay, energy solutions, but we know that we have problems in multiple spheres. And just as you have people who are thinking about solutions in the environmental sphere, you should also be having people who are thinking about solutions in the medical sphere. We should be having, so when we talk about having an African worldview or being African centered, that is not just an education most of the times. Like, we're talking about it in that kind of way, whether we're talking about Black studies, or we're talking about Black History Month, or we're talking about, what we're being educated in the school, like that worldview and positioning should be applied in every area. So those of us who are going into the medical field, or who have an inclination toward those types of industries, whether it's, health and wellness, or going into the actual working into these private hospitals as doctors, or starting your own practice, or being a biologist or scientist or researcher in that kind of way, it should be done from an African perspective and an African worldview and positioning, so that you're thinking about, okay, how do we solve these problems, instead of being at the will and the whim of us here in the United States, but also us on the continent and around the world, how instead of being at the whim of America for the solutions to our problems. When we say African solutions for African problems, this is one of those things too. So when we need to be thinking about and preparing our youth to solve the problems, and getting them to look at things that they can do, or starting to help them see themselves as people who are inventors and creators and innovators, because we know we've created so many things, groundbreaking medical procedures and medical treatments, as well as other inventions for other sectors of life. We need to be back on that same trend. I want to be hearing about Black people who are creating solutions to these types of issues, kind of like the one that Kimber brought up yesterday, where they were able to come up with the solution to end this blindness. And so I think that's one of the things also too in this time we're being pushed to do, is to think about how do we solve some of these problems, so that if Trump want to make these particular decisions, we still have ways in which we're dealing with them, and we already have ways that have already been in place, that we're not waiting until trying to figure out what to do now because it's under attack, that our access to these kind of things. And I think that also calls into account what we should be doing as even individuals in our own communities, in even thinking about being proactive. We even think about the way in which this society and this type of world, like hegemonic worldview that put around the world, of the behaviors that do not help us, whether it's what we eat, what we listen to, whatever we do, we need to be also working to think about how do we start to, as individuals and as communities, change our value system away from like a white middle class, white upper class value system of what we do. I think like one of the things I read recently was like, okay, yeah, we're told to drink alcohol, something that like isn't best for our body in celebration of things, right? So even those things, to wrap your mind around those types of practices and things that we do, because they become so normal for us, because that's what we know and that's what we're used to. So yeah, like pop a bottle of champagne when you're in celebration of this, but is that what we should be going toward, when we're celebrating something, right? Well, for your birthday, you're eating cake, and that's what we should be doing, but also everybody out here, we should be in today's kind of terms, everybody should be out here doing them, and F this person or F that person, and and that, like, but these types of ways of us thinking about even how we live our daily lives have become, and we have to start doing our own self checks along with this, so that we can also be operating from a proactive, preemptive stand, so that we could try to also save off some of these things. So we know we have to catch it on the back end, and we also want to try to catch it on the front end as well.
Right. Definitely.
Yeah, upholding Negro behavior, man, that's another thing. Because we want to come up with every excuse to just defend behaviors that are destructive. This hip hop, for example, there's not all the hip hop, but there's an element of hip hop where we just want to, for whatever reason, defend it, even if it's negativity, as art, or they're just expressing themselves and so forth. All right, well, they can do that, but we don't have to accept it. We just going to accept anything that's so genocide music. Come on, man. We have to call it out. Music that is degrading Black women, whether it's from men or women. We can't accept that. You know, we have to call that out. I remember when the sister was performing in Atlanta at one of the colleges for Kamala having some rally or something.
Yeah.
Oh, that girl.
Yeah, people
What's
was
her
like,
name?
actually the one from Texas, right?
Yeah. Megan Thee Stallion, I believe.
And so, you know, people were calling Kamala out for that and the college out, and people were defending it. Hey, you know, this is what the students wanted. This is what the college wanted. You know, and all of this, all of these excuses in the world.
And it's a shame. It's a shame, and it's something that I have, you know, dealt with because, you know, we come from an era of hip hop. You know, Too Short was out here, you know, saying some things, and
saying some crazy things.
Yeah, we had
a lot of them. NWA was saying something.
They was out here saying some stuff, right? And I think that people have to account for our own evolution as we grew up, because there were some very real things that NWA was dealing with. There was some stuff that Too Short saw. You know, of course, Uncle Luke just wanted to be about the party, and people were kind of trying to find their lane in hip hop and what hip hop really was to them. And then you had Public Enemy come along on a different level and wanting to still be all the way hip hop, but elevate our consciousness to some things. And we've gone through different iterations of hip hop and what is popularly accepted around hip hop. But what I've seen in this generation of so-called hip hop is that it is degrading on a different level. It's degrading to the point where, you know, of course, women's bodies have always been objectified as artists, but it's to the point where they ready to come out naked. You know, they're willing to tell everything that they will do behind closed doors or in a dark alley or whatever. And that is not becoming. It's not becoming, and they don't realize it, but it's what the white establishment wants to see, because this is what they think about Black people. And this is what Black people want to listen to. And this is what Black people say about themselves. So if they say it about themselves, then of course we can say it about them. You got that little girl, Sexy Red, looking like Raj from What's Happening with a wig on. Like literally. The girl looked like Raj from What's Happening with a wig on. And none of the wigs never look professionally done either. Like literally, it looks like she just takes the wigs and she'll just boom, slap that hair down on her forehead right there.
I'm definitely here for a good wig.
And on the side,
if you're gonna wear the wig, it's gotta look right.
Exactly, right? I love a good wig. However, when you come out here with it looking like you just got it from the beauty supply down the street and didn't know how to apply it, but then you're showing everything, and you go and you make products for people to buy, and they have derogatory names. You know, they have names of parts of your private anatomy, and this is what you're talking about. That's not okay. It's not okay. You know, Glorilla want everybody to be at the red light twerking on the headlights. Like, it's not, you know, not okay, honestly. And the music does what people in the music industry know about music, is that it has an intoxicating effect on people, that there are subliminal messages in music that you get through to people that you can't get through any other way, that once a person's spirit connects with a certain beat and a rhythm, now you've got them entranced, and your message is going to get through because it's vibrating through their entire being through that music. So when we are ingesting through music the murdering of each other, the degrading of each other, deciding that you don't care about your body or who has access to your body, and you are willing to give yourself to anyone for anything at any time just because you're the baddest, like, that is not what's up. And I remember in 2023 being at this conference. It was actually the National Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression. I was at their annual conference, and there was a young man there who now lives in Atlanta, who presented a resolution against murder music and talked about all the things that Dr. Ikemba just said. And the way this man was vilified was enough for me to never go back to any of their gatherings again.
Wow. See, that's what I'm talking about.
You know, there was a young man who literally called him a Hotep brother And it's like, okay, well, do you know what
That's what I'm
Hotep even
talking
means?
about.
Exactly.
That's
That's
exactly
number
what I'm
one.
talking about.
You
It's
know
like
what
you
Hotep
can't
means,
say
and
nothing.
maybe if you were a Hotep brother, you would
Yeah.
not think that this type of music is okay. You know, a lot of times we get pulled into music just because of a beat, but once you hear the words, it's like, what?
Yeah,
I
but
don't
but it's being capitalized. The, can we understand that this is being projected for a reason?
Yes,
People are making
yes,
millions, billions of dollars off of this for a reason. And so, yes, like we have to be critical of it. But when you
absolutely.
do, like, I mean, prime example, and not even, no, I'm just want to use it as an example. I understand where this person is coming from in a sense. But look, like, yeah, it's easy to blame black folks.
Uh-huh.
Like, that's a comment that someone made. And this is exactly what happens when
Uh-huh.
you say
Uh-huh.
something about it. It's like, what? Like,
Yeah,
nobody, we talk about colonialism all day, and we talk about these colonizers all day. But there has to be a point where we take accountability and we call out these neo-colonialist people,
uh-huh.
black folks who
That's right.
are, when I look at the black man and I understand, yeah, it's
Look,
there's something pushing the person to do
uh-huh.
that, yeah, but they're
White
making a
supremacy,
conscious decision.
white supremacy doesn't get anywhere without black people to further it along, unfortunately. You
And I
know?
the thing about that too is I think we have to, it's about being able to have a holistic conversation,
Right.
that we have to hold both things at the same time, and that we know that our solutions have to be both as well. There's an African proverb that says no enemy from without can harm, no, if there's no enemy from within, no enemy from without can harm you. And so like just thinking about that in terms of like the we know we live, like we have to really like start to expand our thinking beyond this, the very closed off, particularly controlled way that they have us think about our experience on this earth. They've trained us to think about our experience on this earth as just humans being humans, and we're above everything else, and there's nothing else outside of that. And everything else, anything that you are looking to is outside of you should be seeking this, you should be seeking there. But that, like, no, it's much bigger than that. And that when we actually look at the reality that we live in, it's dynamic, that there's forces that are always moving back and forth, and that within everything we are connected to the earth, and the ebbs and flows, and the principles and the metaphysics that exist. And so that when you think about it in a more holistic way, you have to understand that, like, yes, when we're talking about ourselves and colonialism, imperialism, things that are going on, it's outer and inner, right? There's things that have affected us in the ways in which that we operate, and that are outside of us, and that have manifested into how we behave internally. And so we have to address all of them in order for us to really like come to our solutions. Like, just like we were saying before, okay, if there's a health issue, there's a way to be proactive and do things to prevent a health issue from coming up. But then there's also what we have to do if the health issue does come up on the other side, and we address that. So you always have to be doing it from all angles. Like, you fight a war from all angles. You don't you
Uh-huh.
don't just fight it from one angle. You have multiple fronts on a battlefield, and so you have to mine those fronts. And that's what we're doing when we're having a holistic conversation about what is happening to us, the way that we're being attacked from the outside, and how that's manifesting within our communities, and how do we get those things out. How do we get those things out? Because nobody else is going to get them out for us, right? That we have to get those
Absolutely.
things out as we're fighting. And so we have to fight outside, and we have to build inside. And building means looking and analyzing and critiquing and coming up with solutions. And we can't be afraid to do those things. And I think this also connects to the other story that we wanted to share today about healthcare. We're still on this this seems to be a healthcare episode today, right? We're on our healthcare kick, and and thinking about us, as because if we don't have our health together, I mean, what we can't really do
We have
nothing.
nothing. We have nothing. Health is
Right?
wealth.
Yeah, the
That is
fight
where
can't
your wealth
continue.
comes from.
The
Yes.
fight can't continue. So let me share. Let me let Kiana go ahead and talk about this story, and let me share it with the viewers. with you all who are tuning in this morning with us on the Rise Up Morning Show.
Right in line with Ikemba's story about withholding HIV medication, here we go again. The Trumpers, they have developed a website, DEI Watch List, and they have published the personal information of federal workers, but the majority of people on this list are Black healthcare workers. And when you think about the fact that Trump has already said that the United States won't have any dealings with the World Health Organization, already told the CDC, like, oh, y'all just go home. We don't need no Centers for Disease Control. Don't worry about it. It's not important. Here we go again. And this right-wing watch list was published the other day. And there were people, many of these people who work at the CDC were listed here. So on Tuesday evening, a federal government employee was shocked to find a watch list that included the names, photos, and work history of 57 mostly Black employees from a number of healthcare agencies. Many of the people listed have worked in health equity roles. It's just really scary, said the federal worker who works in a different industry and was asked to remain anonymous out of fear that she may end up on a similar list. I think it's a way to continue to sow that fear, that angst in the culture at a lot of these agencies. And as someone who was placed on administrative leave in January for previously working in a diversity, equity, and inclusion role, she sees the watch list as an attempt to purge government employees who have wanted to make the government work better, and now that's suddenly demonized. The list, which was published online, has the potential to harm people's careers, she said, jeopardize their safety, and take a psychological toll on them. And I just want to go down to this picture, because this is the right-wing white man who runs the American Accountability Foundation, which has targeted federal healthcare workers. His name is Thomas Jones. So let's everybody get a good look at Mr. Thomas Jones. The watch list of federal employees in healthcare is the third such catalog that the American Accountability Foundation has published in the past 4 months. Following one on demand on the Department of Homeland Security workers, another on Department of Education employees, the Heritage Foundation, y'all know that name, the Heritage Foundation, the organization behind Project 2025, which is a right-wing manifesto for overhauling the government, has funded some of the American Accountability Foundation's work. We can stop there. So you have Homeland Security workers, Department of Education employees, and now the latest list is healthcare workers within the federal government, the majority of whom are Black, who have had their personal information published online, what we call doxing. These people now have to be concerned about which MAGA nut might show up at their home. Who's going to follow them to the grocery store? Because you know these people are punks, right? And they're going to target women. I am willing to bet everything that I have in my bank account that they won't pull up on a Black man and try to follow him anywhere. If they do, it'll be a carload of them. But individuals, they will pull up on these Black women healthcare workers, and try to intimidate them. And this is the goal of the Trump administration right now. Mass panic, fear, and intimidation. They want you to be scared. They want you to believe that your job is in jeopardy if you work in certain places. They want you to believe that if you have a 501c3 organization, that your federal funding is in jeopardy. They want you to believe that the National Labor Relations Board will be no more, that they're going to dismantle the entire Department of Education, and that Trump is going to be King Trump, not President Trump, because this is the way things are moving, that along with his cronies, Elon Musty, Mark Zuckerberg, and Jeff Asbestos, they will make this country as white as they want it to be, free of anything that benefits Black people. You know, the first task is to get everybody out of here. Let's get them all out. We're going to round them up. We're going to get them out because ICE on the streets, they walking around. We rounding up these illegals. But y'all know that there is no real interest in deporting people who are not here with their papers because they ain't showed up at one construction site.
I think you got a Trumper in the chat. Yeah.
We probably do. And so what? Come see me. Like, you don't know, you find out all my information, but I wish
we
you
got
would.
a Trumper on Black Power Media.
I wish you would show up somewhere. But at any rate, like I said, we know that Trump really isn't trying to get certain people deported because it would literally cripple the American economy. There would be no agriculture. There would be no construction. There would be no highways being repaired and whatever. Like, it's not happening. It's not happening because they know the benefit of migrant workers who are here in this country. So they really need to stop pretending. But that's the fear that they want to instill. That's the fear that they want. And when we are talking about programs that have been implemented and have not benefited us, it's not about the fact that it hasn't benefited us. It's about the fact that some of them are programs without which Black people would not have even been able to compete with some people. The reason why affirmative action is needed is because there is racism. If there was no racism and this was truly a merit-based society from the beginning, then we wouldn't have had to have, first of all, you wouldn't have had segregation. That's number one. People wouldn't have had to fight for a right to vote, to eat in the same places, even to go to the same schools where Black people consistently outperform their white counterparts. In almost any field and profession you go into, you can find a Black person or a white person in the same position. And more than likely that Black person is more qualified because they have more education. They not only have more education, many times they have more experience and they do the job better. But there are many instances in which that white person will be paid more than the Black person. And I promise you that the Black person is held to a higher level of scrutiny than the white person ever would be because we are so accustomed in accepting of white mediocrity that when there is Black exceptionalism, which there is the majority of the time, it's an issue. So here we are with a president who believes that the best way to scare people out of their jobs, because y'all know that this executive order about people in DEI positions having to leave their job or whatever, that mess is illegal. You can't just tell somebody leave your job. You can't. You absolutely cannot. But this is a way to get people to leave those jobs by putting their information online, by publishing it and making it available for those people who would do the dirty work of, you know, Trump and his friends.
Fall
and
for
whatever.
the trap.
Absolutely. People do not fall for the trap. If you are a federal worker and you happen to find yourself in one of these buckets of people who has been harassed about leaving your job, do not leave your job. Do not leave your job.
Hey, the affirmative action, they think we know who affirmative action
actually benefited.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, but the thing is about it is that whether we already know, right, that anybody who's in the presidential position is not going to be for Black people. And if we had a thought that maybe, you know, when Obama got in, that he was going to do something for Black people, we know he made sure and made clear that that wasn't going to happen either. So it doesn't matter who's in the presidency. They're going to get the smoke from us, period, because
I'm sorry, Natasha. Let me just say to this Shayna, Kyler, whatever your name is, honey. We do plenty of research. We do plenty. And if you want to keep watching, you can keep watching. You can go back in the archives and you'll know the research that we do. Just because we're not saying what you want to hear doesn't mean that we are uninformed or uneducated. I'm sorry, sis.
That's a good point. That's saying what a person wants to hear. That's a good point.
Yeah, that is just my point, that no matter who it is, they're going to get the smoke because the things that they're doing do go against us.
Absolutely.
And it all affects us. So whether or not it's more specific, to this particular law, or how many of us, were affected by this particular law, we know that either way it's affecting us. And so we're going to be talking about it, and we're going to be analyzing it and critiquing it in the same way that we would do with anybody else. Just because we have, just because Trump happens to be the president and, he's in the news all the time, that doesn't mean that, okay, yeah, we shouldn't, still give him the smoke too. No, smoke for all of them.
That's it.
So we can't ever think, like, again, when Malcolm was saying, oh, this person is doing this because it's going to benefit us, in the same way that we can see that, like, yeah, DEI, we know that that mostly benefited white women and everything
exactly
else. But at the same time, we know that whatever has been done and whatever little bit that we did get from it, that's going to affect whatever that was anyway. And that we need to even be creating our own and thinking about why we need to create our own. So we need to have discussions. We need to bring them up. We need to make people clear. And we can't pretend that, it didn't benefit us, but they're going to do something that's going to benefit us.
Right.
In that same vein, okay, this person is still not going to do nothing that benefits us. We have to
absolutely.
Exactly. So that's to tell us,
benefit us.
That should tell us, like, okay, no matter who's in office, this is what we need to do. The oppression, exploitation just looks different. So the fact that something didn't benefit us, and then somebody's going to come in and take away something that doesn't benefit us, that's allegedly supposed to benefit us, but doing it because it may benefit us. Then it's like, hold on.
To do nothing that benefits us. We have to care about that.
Exactly.
Who think that, Trump is a friend. He's not. Listen to what Malcolm said. Well, he's not a friend. And so he's also not creating anything. Don't let anybody allow you to think because he has certain ideas for how he wants to break things up or shake things up, that means it's for your benefit. It's never
absolutely,
and it's
absolutely
they're going to be affected the most by whatever those decisions are.
But look, this is people, just generally speaking, because there's a lot of our people, and I don't know if this person is black or not, but there's a lot of black folk out there who have brought into the American system, and so that's why they have to be tied to something, whether it's Republican or Democrat, right, left, but because these bourgeois parties, and they would admit to it. Remember, we just watched the Dr. King video, and the reporter said bourgeois values, right? They just don't use the language anymore, but they would tell you, like, bourgeois values. This is a system that was created by the bourgeoisie. And so even when we look at the history, because you talked about this fear, Kiana, that this administration is trying to pump into black people and just the working class in general. This is what they did even after the end of the Civil War, and you had black people who were coming out of chattel slavery and now competing for these jobs, because this is what it is. Like, these people aren't supposed to have these jobs. There's this competition for jobs. When white workers are doing bad, we are going to feel it. We always going to feel it, and we always going to get the short end of the stick. And so what we're seeing now, this has happened before. Historically, this has happened where black people come in and maybe starting to relatively benefit from the system. Then white workers come along, and white supremacists come along and say, hey, we need to get together so we can stop this advancement of black people, or what perceives to be an advancement, because it's really not an advancement. There's only crumbs that's given for some of our folks. And so we should be thinking about nation building, going back to what we talked about before.
Yeah, and going into this Black Power break.
Oh, hold on. No, wait. This person gotta go. Look at this last comment. You are not black. You're a native.
The
You're a
girl,
native
what's her
to this.
name?
You're a
Shayna,
native to
whoever.
this land.
She needs some attention. She needs some attention. Y'all go say hey to
gotta
Shayna Kyler.
We gotta go to the Black Power break and come
out of here. When they start talking about that native to the land stuff.
Respect for self. Once you love yourself, once you respect yourself, once you know yourself, you will never lie down and accept anyone's authority over your life again.
Many African Americans can accept United States government governing rulership. But is that a collective rulership and governing on the part of the entire population, or is it in fact white rulership?
Well, yeah. Well, it's clearly it's not only it's even worse than that. It's not even total white rulership. It's minority white rulership. And let me give you an example. Most people in the Western world now, and this is just one very simple example, have decided that the exploitative apartheid system in South Africa is wrong. It is humanly wrong. It is morally wrong. It's even economically wrong. I mean, to be involved in the affairs of other people in that very destructive way, particularly with a few people ruling, destroying economically, politically, and physically, violently, the lives of thousands of people in South Africa is wrong. But the American government funds governments and funds resources that buy weapons to kill black people in South Africa. Now, that's a political decision. That's a decision that's being made. The American government, or what we call the American government, decided to arbitrarily bomb an African nation. Libya, which is an African nation, decided to bomb it based upon admitted lies. I mean, they admitted to the lies. I mean, I'm not suggesting, some kind of strange spy way that they did something, that I understand something about Libya that they don't. They admitted that they lied about Muammar Gaddafi. They admitted that they lied about the role that Libya was playing in terms of the American security. But they created the mythology to justify dropping a bomb, killing women and children, young people in Africa. Now, who decided to do that? Did the majority of the American people decide to do that? Certainly not. Did black people have a way of that decision? Certainly not. We had nothing to do with that decision. So the ability to go and drop bombs on Africa, with us having nothing to do with that, to invade Grenada several years ago, to send in troops to a little black island like Grenada a few years ago to free 4 or 5 white medical students, allegedly. The ability to do those kinds of things demonstrates very clearly that the governmental decisions are not being made by black folks, nor are they even being made by the majority of white folks.
To what extent, briefly, to what extent do you think white people have been able to create the illusion of being all-powerful?
Oh, they've done an excellent job of doing that. Everything from the religion down to the cartoons. And I'll give you an example. In the religion, of course, we go into church and we see God as a white man. Blonde hair, blue eyes, his mama is white, his daddy is white, God's angels are white, everybody at the Last Supper is white, nobody black even serving the roles when you come to God and those things that identify God. That we grow up looking at our religious scriptures thinking white people. So not only have they created the illusion that they are all powerful like God, they've done even worse than that. Even in the cartoons, they've taken the mythology out of Egyptian civilization. Nile Valley civilization, like Isis, for an example. The ancient deities, the ancient god-like figures in ancient Nile Valley civilization, and made them white. So Isis then is a white lady. And she came out of Africa in the cartoons I'm talking about. So even 4- and 5-year-olds are learning the concept of being socialized into the thinking that white people are all powerful. They do everything educationally. We are taught that every discipline had its origin in Greece. We begin to think then, Greece, Rome, that's the source of all civilization, the source of all culture, the source of all art, the source of all things. And in the process of believing that, we believe that white people are totally, devastatingly, intimidatingly all-powerful, and black people by definition are inferior, weaker, and less capable.
Yeah, he said it. Y'all are tuned in to the Rise of Show. And we, you know, this is the kind of stuff we deliver to you on this early morning. Some food, you know, this your breakfast.
That's it. That's it, right?
That food, that good food for thought. Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely.
One of the things when he said that thing about the white children, I mean the young children 4 and 5, you know, seeing white people as all powerful and being trained in that kind of way. I literally was just having a conversation yesterday with a friend of mine who works at a school, and she's a principal at a school, and she was working on like a reading chapter or like a reading exercise with her students, and she had she was helping these students, most of them are Black students, and she was telling them like, okay, well, make a movie with the as you're reading the book. You know, reading the book is like making a mind movie. And so she was asking, okay, well, you know, in your mind movie, what do you see? What does the character look like? And the little Black boy said, white. It's a white boy. It's you know, he's white. And so like, even in your own imagination, because you're being trained up in that, and you're 4, you're 5 years old, in your own imagination, when you have to, in your mind, create a story and create an image, and what comes up for you is a white person, that your characters are automatically white, because that's what you're trained to think about as the ones, is
crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. And we know that these examples and the legacy of white supremacy and the indoctrination and the propaganda to make them the all-being, the all-knowing, the source of everything, the omnipotent, every word that you can think of, that, you know, they falsely equate themselves with, and falsely brainwash people to think about them as, is manifested in the way we see ourselves, in the way our children see themselves, and what they see in general.
Yes, absolutely. It goes back to the experiment that was done with some dolls years ago, showing Black girls, white dolls, and Black dolls. And even the prettiest Black doll that was presented was not chosen by some of these young Black girls, because all they had seen all the time was the beauty that was promoted in white women. They never saw themselves as beautiful. They never saw a Black woman being promoted as beautiful. Look how long it took Disney. I mean, as if we would have expected something different, but how long it took Disney to have a Black princess. Think about this. They had Jasmine. They had a Middle Eastern princess before they had Tiana. You know, they had everything else before.
Different shades. You
know? Absolutely. They went through the whole crayon box before they got.
And we was waiting for them to come and
exactly right,
instead of, you know, us being sure that we had those.
Exactly. And that is really, really something. And it's a really easy way to explain to people the indoctrination of the white worship, you know, the indoctrination and the same type of propaganda that's put on to all of us from the time that we are birthed and the time that we begin to see things in this world. When we look at, you know, I was a big martial arts person when I was younger. Like, I love watching the karate movies. I love some Bruce Lee, and I loved, you know, anything that showed people fighting and using the martial arts. We would watch that when I was younger. Me, my grandpa, my uncles, my cousins. And of course, in those movies, all the good guys wore white. All the bad guys were wearing Black. Everything Black is bad. It wasn't until Chuck Norris, of all people, came out with a movie, Good Guys Wear Black. And even then, the message still, you know, didn't reach, because I know that he didn't mean it that way. He didn't really mean to educate people about the power of Black. But in all of our imagery, white is seen as good and Black is seen as bad. When people talk about witchcraft, they talk about Black magic as opposed to white magic, right? If you are a witch who practices in so-called white magic, that's right, you're a good witch. Good stuff. You're a good witch. But if you are practicing Black magic, how dare you?
Give me some of that white fairy dust.
You know?
Man.
And we know usually white is not good for you.
at all. White sugar,
white bread,
nothing.
white rice.
That's right. It ain't good because there's bleach.
White people,
and bleach is dangerous. Bleach will kill you.
Exactly.
That's a fact.
Exactly.
It's the truth. It's the truth. I mean, when we think about it, and of course it is still all around us. That is why people don't understand why DEI really has not benefited us, because it is just a buzzword. You know, I first heard the terms diversity, equity, and inclusion while my children were in school. You know, my older daughter was in school, and I remember them talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion in education, and beginning to hire some other professionals to promote this and to be able to help staff members with this, you know, especially around the time in New Jersey when they passed the legislation for the Amistad curriculum, which mandates that you have to teach Black history and all of your history, right?
Where is this
at? In New Jersey.
They have one in New York too, but that's
they called it the Amistad curriculum.
Yes, it is called the Amistad curriculum. But you know, with everything, it gets watered down because it gets to the point where, you know, you can you're able to just check things off of the list, as they do with state departments of education. You know, did you cover Dr. King? Oh, check. We read the I Have a Dream speech. What did you do for Black history? Oh, we watched that Underground Railroad movie. Check. You know, how are you incorporating the Amistad curriculum? Oh, I talked about the Phoenicians as I was doing, you know, phonetics today. Check.
Yeah.
But I promise you, ain't nobody talking about the Phoenicians. They're not. They're not saying that that's where the word phonetics comes from. They're not talking about cuneiform and how language even came into being and writing and all this stuff. They're not talking about that. They're not going that in depth. Although it is my hope that all of these years later, they would have begun to make advances. But, you know, hearing about DEI and what it was and what it was supposed to be,
it's over.
Damn, at that time.
You're talking in the past tense. It's over, huh?
No, they still have the Amistad curriculum, but
no, I'm talking about DEI. DEI is a wrap, though.
Yeah, that's
because who has ever truly embodied it, though, and that's the thing.
And you gotta the idea of, first of all, diversity. We know that diversity is a buzzword. Equity is a buzzword. Inclusion is a buzzword. Belonging is a buzzword. And that really, when they make these kind of blanket terminologies, that it's to make sure that Black people are obscured within the process.
Yes.
So that this blanket is supposed to, quote unquote, cover everyone, but the blanket is really supposed to cover Black people to make sure you don't see them, that that they're not seen, and that there's no real such thing as diversity, because we know that they're pushing everyone, especially through the school system and through the media, toward a white middle class value system, ontology, way of seeing the world, way of thinking about the world, lens, anywhere that you want to think. We all need to be white and Black skin, you know.
That's it.
Black and we need to be, you know, we need to have white skin with white minds, really, is the word I was looking for, right? That's what we need to be. We need to have white minds and Black skin. That's what they want to have, and that's what they're pushing everyone towards. So really, even is that diversity when you really just want the difference in skin color. That's it. No, that's not really.
But that's again going back to the trap that I talked about earlier. Remember, I was talking about this. First of all, we're in an ideological war, right? And we're losing so many battles. But for the colonizer, these former slave masters who are able to get the oppressed to feel like they can join the ranks of the colonizer, that there's opportunities for you to climb up and be a part of this. The bourgeoisie keeps the colonized from overturning the system. And we get people who will turn against the mass. They would forsake their class interest to be a part of this ruling class. And so this is what things like affirmative action, diversity, equity, and inclusion is still a trap at the end of the day. Because look, now we fighting for it. We want it. We want to be included in the system of oppression and exploitation. We want now. don't get me wrong. Like there is something we need to fight for because we can't just lay down and die. So we should be struggling for what they say we supposed to have, right? But at the same time, that can't be the end game because it's a system of colonialism. We don't want to maintain the system. We want to destroy the system. But if you go back, and I saw something on social media when talking about the 14th Amendment to be for black people and all these other people. This is how like brainwash these people are very intelligent. If it was supposed to be for black people, the 14th Amendment, it would have said black people, right? It said all people that were born naturalized. Of course, was black people in mind? Yeah. But they thinking long term. They thinking, anybody who's born here. They're not just thinking about your monkey, excuse me. Now, affirmative action. If you look at the history of affirmative action, that was for white workers. That was unions. They were when they were using the term affirmative and all of that, which would later become affirmative action. They were putting policies in place in white workers who were unions and being discriminated against, and that would evolve over time into what we know of as affirmative action. But even if you look at the language, it doesn't just say black people. I think it was sex and so I don't know exact language, but it didn't just say for black people.
Yeah, right? Gender, sex, race.
Gender might have came late, but but definitely, yeah. So, so just keep in mind, anything that they do is not going to be exclusive for black people. And for one, the Constitution makes it illegal for them to do something like that anyway. That's why you have pushback against anything that is supposed to benefit black folks. Yeah. And if you do some research, you'll see that there's organizations that are created to address the needs of black folk, but they got to change the language to even get funding.
Of course.
A lot of that.
Of course.
And that's the key about being on point and being clear. I think that's the thing that we're trying to get at as a people, is to have us as a people in general be clear about our position, and not to think that anybody's giving us anything, and that people are actually, that the United States is really on our side, and that we're Americans and we just got to fight a little harder. We just got to change some things here, replace a couple things there, and therefore it'll be good. No, like the whole damn system is guilty as hell, right?
That's it. That is it. That's what we say.
We have to make
that's clear, what we really need to be talking
right
about.
We have to make clear that no matter what it is, like Akimba was saying, like no matter if people are talking about DEI, no matter if people are talking about affirmative action, no matter if people are talking about a civil rights bill or a 14th Amendment, we are always thought about how do we make sure we skirt around them and make sure that they don't, benefit from this, and make sure that we actually do something that goes against them and long term, not just short term. We need to stop thinking that, okay, everything is just about what about next month or what about next year. Like, no, these people, like we said at the beginning of the show, I think it was at the beginning of the show, or was it the pre-show?
Right. We're going on 3 hours right now.
They're
2.5.
10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 years ahead when they make a plan today.
Yes.
And so we have to also do the same thing. And when something comes out and they tell us it benefits us, yes, go and look exactly at what it says to see, really, is this benefiting us?
Absolutely.
And how could this hurt us? And what does this mean for us in 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, 100 years from now?
Yes. There you have it, people. There you have it.
That's it. And we've been rocking out with y'all.
It's been a loaded show today, y'all.
We've been rocking without y'all, with y'all.
But we all ending together though.
Yes, you know that as a preacher, they say that before you deliver your sermon to anybody, you got to preach to yourself, right? So look, we had to get it for ourselves today.
Yeah, we had to get ready before,
Yes.
I had a great time this morning, man. Appreciate the chat too. The chat was energized this morning.
Hey, I love it.
We appreciate y'all on this Free 'em All Friday. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. You were tuned into the Rise Up Morning Show on Black Power Media Reloaded. Free them all. Free all U.S. held political prisoners. And we will see you next week.
Peace, y'all.
Hey, uhuru.
Uhuru. Rise up.
Sometimes the riot is a quiet one. Well, the battle is to love yourself and function in society where voices of reason are muted by anxiety, like gaining notoriety is selling your soul. So we tend to go no deeper than the shallow water level, trying to keep us overhead in the face of all the slurs and the stares. Mentally frozen, paralyzed by fear of failure and success. So we lock, stock, barrel, running while it's crumbling. All these towers and that babbling, but the baby's in the bath and the stash under the bed on my head, spinning from the circles and the puppets and the strings that they pull. Then we move. Reactionary warfare never produces winners on the field. Feeble and foolish. What tools and what weapons are we using? We need some new ones. Real revolution. It's real solutions. Well, we've taken on the ways of the ones who conquer with their guns and religion and division. Got my inner me looking like my enemy. Real revolution. Well, my inner me really a mirror for the galaxy. New time, brand new paradigms, new contracts to sign. They thought that this would all be televised, though it's happening right before our very eyes. It's on the inside, with their guns cocked. When that rock drops, standing on the rooftop, praying that the mountaintop can live inside the valley. People tell me the reward is somewhere off in heaven, like heaven's only in the sky. Like chariots are swinging, like God is something separate from yourself, from your wealth, from your lover, from your neighbor. Oh, your savior is coming in your own name, coming with the face the same. Real revolution. It's real solutions. Well, we've taken on the ways of the ones who conquer with their guns and religion and division. Got my inner me looking like my enemy. Real revolution. Where my enemy is really a mirror for the galaxy.